We have Mr. Robert Marling here today. He's the chairman and CEO of Woodforest National Bank, and those are just banks scattered, I guess, throughout eastern Texas mostly, near the Woodlands. And he's a member of many organizations as well. And I'll just let him open.
Hey, you let me open. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to be here. Alexa, thank you. I guess what I'm told is this is entrepreneurship, so I'm not sure exactly the format. This is the first time, and the reason I even agreed to do this is because my daughter is an Aggie now, and she loves the school, so she said, Dad, get your foodie up here. So, so after speaking today, I'll have a little lunch with her. Or maybe dinner, I guess that's probably the point. So I made some notes, but really, as I'm told, this format is about your questions you might have. So I'll tell you a little bit about what I do and a little bit of, try to keep it very simple for you, and then you can shoot at me with those tough questions. But first off, again, Robert Marling, 3 kids. One's entrepreneurial, one's a Baylor grad, and one's an Aggie, a sophomore now, and all of them have been around the banking business as I was as a young kid. And I started in banking at 19 years old. The reason I was doing that, I wasn't very smart. I got married very young and decided I needed to go to night school, and that's how I was going to get my education, work during the day and go to night. However, I found that I loved my job so much that I was actually pretty good at it, and so worked very hard in the banking business. And that was in '76 when I started, and about '77 got noticed and promoted in '78, and I was a vice president for First City, which was a big company here in Houston, big banking company back then. In 1980, one of the presidents of one of the First City banks came at me and offered me to open a bank, so start a brand new bank. So I was the number 2 guy on the board. I was still a young guy, 25 years old at the time, and so that was a big move for me to go and open a new bank, and did that, got it up and running. That was quite fun, by the way. But then my old employer, First City, came back at me to go back to work for them and threw a bunch of money at me. And the money that they threw at me was sort of in the technology world. So I jumped ship from banking into technology from about 81 to 89. So there were, quite a few years where technology was hitting its, starting to hit its peak anyway. And so actually, as a technology guy, you could make a lot more than bank presidents back in those days. So I went where the money was. I mean, that's kind of where my interest was, and had a lot of fun doing that. But in 1988, 89, the banking crisis hit in Texas, and that same little bank I opened back in 1980 really was on the edge of failing. A lot of banks have failed over the last 2 or 3 years, about 150 or so just in the last couple of years, and that's a whole different subject. But that bank in the 80s was close to failing. So I grabbed a friend of mine, a mentor, as we'll talk about in just a minute, to help me actually help me acquire this bank. So basically in 1989, he and I bought controlling interest of a bank. It was 2 locations. I had about $60 million in assets, had about 76 people, and we took it from that to today, roughly 5,000 employees. We have about $3.7 billion in assets. 86, 87, 88, the bank lost money, and we're not quite to 100 million in earnings, but I think we had 95 million a couple years ago. This past year was about 88 million. So real strong banking company, and basically built that from the ground up. A cute story I think I told Alexa was when I first joined the bank back in '89, sometimes you get to make the tough decisions, and got a group of people around the table and said, look, this bank doesn't start making money, it's going to fail, and we need to make at least $750,000 this year. Being fairly new, they're only about a month into this thing. The chief financial officer sort of laughed at me a little bit, and I told him, I said, what's so funny? He said, well, there's no way we can do that. And I said, well, real simply, that we're going to do that, or one of us won't be here, and I'm going to pick first. And, he got the message. He left 30 days later, by the way. And that same year, 1989, we made $850,000. And we went on to make $1.7 million and $2.2 million, and I can give you the numbers, but now we're up in that $90, $100 million range in terms of earnings. So the company is a privately held company. The guy that helped me buy into the bank back in 1989 is now the owner of the baseball team, the Arizona Diamondbacks. A guy named Ken Kendrick, great guy. He's one of my mentors, sort of part of the speech I'll give you a little bit about those kinds of things. So '89, I think he helped. So I've been running it pretty much ever since, and it's been a lot of fun doing that. I think somebody did give me an award a few years back, a big Entrepreneur of the Year kind of thing, and as I think back on it, the things that I did, I think that were entrepreneurial because I just really wanted a job, and then I wanted to be good at it, and then I wanted to get noticed at it, and people did that fairly quickly. That was kind of cool, and so just working hard, I think, was the main driver for me. What I remember, and the things that I did entrepreneurial was just being good at it, but B, sort of to find a better way to do it. You guys have the advantage of finding better ways to do it with technology these days. That's huge. And I was kind of young at the time, remember, so I was finding better ways to do things. And people took notice of that, and it allowed me to move up the ladder. In fact, the guy that went and opened the new bank called me because he knew I could do things and was innovative in the way I did things and could work with less people. And so he found me out and opened the bank for him, got it running. And by the way, that's the same bank in 1980 that I came back to in 1989. So I opened it, and the board of directors knew me. They called me, said they were close to failing. Could I bring some capital? Could I bring some expertise back and save the bank? So that was in '89. I kind of made a little note because I think that one of the things that was kind of cool was that the banking business, when I started in it, my partner, who, like I mentioned, is the baseball guy, he knew me fairly well, and one of the things that he was worried about was my ability to maintain something. He knew I could turn something around. He knew I could grow it maybe, but I get bored easily. So he kind of kept his eye on me for just a little, not much, but just a little bit of eye, because remember I had his money. And so the cool thing about buying a little business like that was, first off, we got it up and corrected all the bottom line problems and the earnings. So we got the earnings. When you have earnings, it solves a lot of problems. The second thing we did, we started opening a couple of branches. That was kind of fun. Third thing we did was kind of, in 1995, we bought another bank, National Bank of Conroe. And today, we have the largest market share in Montgomery County in the Woodlands there. Most people don't know we're in 17 states. In 1996, we opened our first Walmart, and that was in Conroe. And today, we have over 700 locations with Walmart inside their stores in 17 states across the country. Looking to do a few more. The last few years have slowed us down, but we just agreed to take on 17 more in the fourth quarter, different states, North Carolina, Alabama, and those things. So, I guess the point being, and you got to do some branches, you got to build some constituencies, some relationships, meet some folks, investors, customers, and then kind of build from there. And I mentioned that we bought a merchant acquiring business. Y'all don't know what that is probably, but it's y'all probably heard of global payment systems, all these debit card compromises or those kinds of things. Well, a merchant acquiring is if you go to the jewelry store or restaurant and swipe your MasterCard or Visa, there's a bank and a business and then a bank behind the swipe. We have to guarantee the settlement of the payments. So we have 40,000 of those merchants nationwide. We do about $5 billion of merchant volume. That's a company that we bought, and we operate that as well. In 2000, we started a financial services company, so we have assets under management, that we do business with. I think in 2004, cute little story, we foreclosed on a golf club. I don't think they mind telling the names because they're not broke or anything, but Charles Schwab was actually the guy that owned the golf course. So you're thinking, why would he let a golf course foreclose? Well, he put a lot of money down, but he got in a little spat with the developer, and he just kind of threw the keys back. And we had some of that non-recourse financing, so we took the golf course back. Put the name Wood Forest Golf Club on it, and if you ever want to play golf, call me up. We make the holes a little bit bigger, so you can make the putts. Okay, so it is kind of neat being on. So I bought the course out of that, and I own the golf course outright. We have little fun tournaments, do all kind of fun things, but on occasion I will make people mad, cut the holes smaller, bigger, just to have a little fun with folks. One time I had a big bet with the guys that said they could shoot 92 and those kind of things, and the only condition was it couldn't be raining, it didn't want a cart pass, and I said, well, fine, that's the only condition. So I went out there and made the pin placements where they needed to be and all that stuff, and needless to say, after 9 holes, I got all their money, and they didn't want to play anymore. I brought a movie camera crew out there to film them, got this all on film, so very fun memories. So some entrepreneurial thought processes to harass your friends. So anyway, we have a merchant acquiring business, a financial services company. You also, I think I mentioned that one of the things we did back in '05 was we started a charitable foundation, and the bank contributed $1 million. The last couple of years, $3 million each, and so we're getting about a $20 million corpus, and we last several years have given money out to the hungry and kids, backpack lunches. My wife's involved in that, but the bank does golf tournaments, or they do volleyball and baseball and all kinds of fundraising things that really increases morale, and it's about a culture of giving back to the community. So I think, I guess my point I'm trying to make is by some simple job that actually started out as the mail boy, and worked my way up fairly quickly. Didn't have the education that I'd like to have had to open the doors. I'm hoping my kids have all that. My middle son's working on his CPA, my daughter's here, so I think that'll be a good step for them. But just by working hard and getting noticed, and then just finding the right opportunity. I wouldn't have had an investor if they didn't believe in me. They didn't see my work ethic and see that I knew what I was doing. So the investor, I always say three things. Number one, and you go to work for somebody, your employer is important, your boss is important, right? Because the bosses have friends and colleagues too, so they're watching you. The second thing is if you're able to bring customers into any business, you become more valuable, period. And then the third thing for me is if you've got an investor to follow you. That's the ultimate compliment, really. If somebody's willing to give you their hard-earned money for you to invest, that's a big compliment. And my guy that I tell you about is in Arizona that was my partner, financial partner. I couldn't have done the deal without him. He's been down to Houston 7 times, maybe 8 times in 20 years. I've gone to see him a bunch. I told the cute story that when I was first trying to get the deal done with this guy, he's a pretty significant guy, so I'm calling him and trying to get this deal negotiated every day, and I'm waiting for his phone calls. It's killing me because sometimes it'll take him a day or two to return a phone call. Well, I was mentioning it. Now if I call him today, he'll call me back in the next 30 minutes. I got a lot of his net worth, so guys like that will call him back. I was running all these companies. We have a great relationship now. So you want to always along the way build these relationships, open doors, and build relationships with those things. But so your boss is the first one. If some kid comes up to me and he's a dishwasher, I say, be the best one you can be. Somebody's watching. Somebody will notice. And then the other thing is work for the right person. If you're going to work for somebody, you can be an entrepreneur, work for somebody, but work for the right person. You get used to laugh at a bunch of folks being a banker. Say, oh, well, go buy your house, go buy your fancy car, go get in debt. What I meant by that was you become a slave to me. You need to work. I can tell you that had I not saved some money and put some money away, and when I bought the bank, when I went to buy the bank, if I had to have the ability to put some money into it, and then when I bought the bank, I sold everything I owned so that I had really no debts. Small house. My wife kind of slapped me upside the head a couple times. But I took every extra dollar I had and invested in the bank company. So, I'm a huge shareholder today because of that belief that I could do it, the belief that others had that I could do it. And so I think those are just some characteristics that I want to throw out there to you. And it's been a great ride. Continue the ride. There are other things that we do. We spun out some real estate because we had bad real estate assets in the company. And now it's a real estate investment company. We have joint ventures with folks and do some other things. So you can turn lemons into lemonade if you have a little bit of that entrepreneurial thought process always. Somebody's problems is somebody else's opportunity. So I know we're kind of short on time. I kind of say that mentors are important. Be careful about your mentors. My first mentor, who promoted me when I was very young, and maybe we're all young and impressionable, man, if he told me to do something, I would do it. Well, one of the things I watched him work, he was great at working, articulate. He was journalistic. I mean, he could present all those kinds of qualities. Just a smart guy. But his personal life was devastating. He ended up shooting himself about 8 years later. And at the time, I'm going, this is my mentor. And I'm going, professionally, he's my mentor. Personally, maybe he's not. Yeah, terrible. Yeah, man. But later, the guy that invested with me out of Arizona, what a fabulous mentor, told the story that my first meeting with this bank board group was they wanted to meet my investor. And so I flew him in. He sat down with the bank board of the troubled bank. And the entire bank board, which is most average twice my age at least at the time, was asking him, if we have a problem, how do we get a hold of you? And he said, through this guy right here. And that, again, made me feel about 8 foot tall. And when I got up to work in the morning, I was working for him. And by the way, if you're working for him pretty hard, it works pretty good for me. And so that was kind of an interesting So mentors are important. So the guy is a big mentor. I call him if I need an opinion, but he doesn't tell me how to run the business. You know, I'm still in charge. And then one of my last mentors, or first, he's a great friend of mine, this guy named Gerald Cobb, and he was the chairman of the board in 1980. And when I came back to be the CEO about back in, he was the CEO at the time. He's now 83 years old. And we were supposed to retire him when he hit 66 or 67, I don't know what the number was. But we've been violating human resources policy ever since because he's just so good. And what I love about a guy like that, he came out of the Depression, and you know he's got all kinds of stories. But the one thing I had to teach him was the difference between spending and investing, because everything to him was spending. And so a lot of times you need to. Sometimes you buy a new car, you think that's investing, you know, not necessarily. So I would just challenge you to make sure you know the difference between spending and investment. And when our lenders lend money, sometimes I used to laugh at those guys. You need to know the difference between a charitable contribution and a loan, right? So can you get it back, or are you just giving it away? So spending and investing is also something that you have to reconcile in your mind, because you know, some people won't spend the money. I invested in some companies a long time ago that had to have a marketing budget, and they screwed up some other things, and the marketing budget got pulled, and that marketing budget would make the business work, and so everybody lost their money. I had no control over that, by the way, and so that's another thing I advocate is have some control over what you do. And I invested in 2 or 3 things and had no control over limited partnerships, and they sounded good at the time. They have my money, and I have the experience. So that's what I would sort of challenge. Be careful of investing with others when you have very little control. And then the last thing a little bit is an exit strategy. You can get into all kinds of investments, right? Businesses, I see people all the time, but they don't have an exit, or they don't think through the exit. They're so excited about the entry that they just don't worry about the exit. The exit's the most important in any strategy that you come up with, any investing things. And I get a lot of guys that'll come up to me and they got a new product here, they want to buy a building here, they want to start a business here. And so we're talking about business plans. And plans are great and all that stuff, but it's no substitute for, you know, hard work and sweat equity and knowing your business. But the first 2 or 3 things, in my opinion, that you're going to do is you're going to make an impression with somebody, a boss somewhere. And if you make the right impression, you're going to get noticed. And if he leaves, he's going to call you and take you with him, and you'll make more money. Or vice, those kind of things. That's how it worked for me. And it's been a very good ride. And I have some more notes, but I'm going to stop there because I know we're a little bit limited on time. Lots of things in banking that are interesting. One cute story about my daughter, the debit cards that a lot of people use these days. My daughter thinks I'm the smartest guy in the world and that I know everybody. And that's because I have technology give me a readout of where she's going every single minute using that debit card. I know where she had lunch, how many iTunes music she bought. I mean, I know where she got her car filled up with gas, and I'll just say, hey, I heard you at the Exxon station the other day. Yeah, how'd you know that? Oh, I got friends everywhere. She's in college, I still got her number. So, anyway, and then one other cute side story, just being a banker. I saw in there that we expect 12 robberies a year. When you have that many branches, you're going to get robbed. And there's some sad stories, but another cute story a long time ago was my son had some friends over the house, and one of them decided to pick his debit card up and go use it, you know. And so he realized, that my son realized that his debit card was missing. And I guess the friend didn't realize that, you know, I run a bank, own a bank, whatever. And you know, I have all kinds of fraud people, you know, connected to the FBI's and Secret Service and all that. You just don't want to mess with a banker, especially the son of the banker's dad. So needless to say, you know, I could have had charges filed on this kid for doing all this stuff. He went and used the debit card in 2 or 3 places. But I had the young kid come in, and I said, well, do me a favor. I'm not going to file charges on you if you tell me one thing, or tell me something. He goes, what's that? I said, well, tell me everything you've done wrong in the past 2 years that has to do with stealing, you know. And man, I got a list of going to the country club and ripping stuff off, to going to the golf course and stealing golf carts, and worked at Circuit City and stealing stereos. I mean, that debit card was just a piece of cake. But actually, the cool thing about that was, I mean, I got his dad and his mom and turned him around right there at that one point. So the kid's a great kid now, but you know, he was on a pretty rough path. You know, just that one little debit card he could have left. But I said, you don't want to mess with us. I got FBI, Secret Service, fraud people. I mean, they'll be all over you. You tell me the truth, you go free. You don't tell me the truth, I'm gonna turn these guys loose on you. What do you want to do? And he gave me a list of stuff he stole and ripped off that would just blow your mind away. Didn't put him in jail, just learned a lesson, and he's doing great today. But so we see all kinds of things in the banking business, and life's experiences are part of being an entrepreneur and learning from them. And if you don't learn from every experience and then share that with somebody, that's a big key. Last thing is just surround yourself with very competent, capable people, and then you can not only enjoy yourself but also get to have some fun. Did anybody watch the Masters yesterday? A few of you, yeah. So I got to watch the Masters a little bit yesterday, and when I got to the office this morning, I got a call and an invite to go play Augusta, next week. So I cleared my calendar. I have capable people going to run it while I go hit some golf balls next week. I will not shoot what Bubba shot, but anyway, we'll go have some fun. So anyway, that's a little of my story, and I guess open it for questions, or we turn it over.
Yeah, thank you so much. We
Yeah.
would love to open it to questions to both of you after we hear a little bit more about you and the introduction.
All right, our speaker is a fellow Aggie, and he's a Texas A&M class of '75 grad. He earned his degree in electrical engineering. After he graduated, he went to work for ExxonMobil. And in 1985, he left ExxonMobil to form his own business, and it's EN Global. In Global. He started with one customer, and now they employ over 2,000 people, and it's a publicly traded company. So, without further ado, Mr. Bilkowski.
Thank you. Well, I graduated from electrical engineering, and what we do is we design and we build energy-related facilities. So like all the way from the wellhead to pipelines that transport gasoline, crude oil, and natural gas, to processing facilities, to refineries, to petrochemical plants, anything to do in the whole energy chain, we design those facilities and we build them. And we're mostly domestic right now. One of our initiatives is to go overseas, because that's honestly where the big bucks are. There's a lot of risk overseas. The companies like Exxon and Chevron, they're spending all their money overseas. And so my wife and I decided to start a business in 1985. It was probably the worst time you could ever start a business in the city of Houston. It was the middle of the oil depression, but I figured things could only get better. And so there's only one way to go. This is back when Houston, whole neighborhoods were boarded up and people had left town. And I said, well, it can't get any worse, so let's go start a business. And I had one customer. I had Exxon as a customer. And honestly, I always thought I would be a one-person consulting company, with my wife doing the books and me doing the technical work, doing the engineering work. And so it was kind of a nice, easy little situation. One customer, me doing the work, my wife keeping the books. But then things, and I can't honestly admit to having a business plan, but things took on a life of their own. We did some good work. Our one customer asked us to hire some people and get a bigger office, and so ExxonMobil kind of sponsored us into business, if you will. And one time we had a summer picnic. I'll tell my funny little story. But we had a summer picnic. We'd gotten up to about 50 people, and so out in the field there's probably 150, 200 wives, husbands, kiddos running out in the field. And it woke me up, and it made me realize how many mouths I was responsible for feeding. But just think, 200 people out there, and me, I'm responsible for feeding all these people, and I have one customer. And it really scared me. And so at that point in time, I realized I needed to diversify my business. And so we hired a couple salespeople and went out and called on other similar clients. And back then, in the late 80s, Exxon was 100% of our business, and today they're about 10% of our business. And so we successfully, over many years, diversified our business. And I guess one of the most exciting things for me personally, and again, I went to work for Texaco out of school because it was the only job offer I had. So my decision was pretty easy. Hopefully your decision will be a little more complicated. I hope you have more than one job offer when you graduate. But for me, it was a pretty simple decision. So I went to work for Texaco in their pipeline group, and I learned the pipeline business and how to design pipeline facilities. And I always thought, since I was brought up this way, my parents told me, go to work for a good company, stay there 35, 40 years, and just make a career and then retire. And that was my mindset. But I think to be an entrepreneur, you really have to have a little urge or itch. You have to be a little bit impatient. You really need to want something more than working a job 40 hours a week or something like that. It's good to start off that way and get the experience, but if you really have an urge to kind of be on a faster treadmill, if you will, you'll really just inherently want to go out and start a business on your own. And that's what we did, and took the company public in 1994. The name in global, ENG, is the first three letters of engineering. So I reserved that stock symbol on the NASDAQ, And then we built a name around it. I knew I wanted my stock symbol to be ENG, and I wanted my company name to start with ENG. And so we had a marketing firm come up with Global. But it's 2008 was our peak year. We made about $40 million in profits, had about 3,000 people working for us. And with the economy and our clients spending less here domestically, we've contracted about a third since that time. We currently have about 2,000 people. But, and that's where we are today. We're still doing the same thing. I guess our big initiatives are to move overseas and probably do more work offshore out in the Gulf of Mexico, offshore platforms. And we've always been an acquisitive company. We've done probably 12 acquisitions in our history. These are all small companies. Engineering is a very fragmented business. There's a lot of little small mom and pop companies that you can bring into the fold, and so you have to learn how to be a successful acquirer and integrator of these firms. And that's how we've built the business. Has been a lot of fun. Gives you a lot of opportunities. But I'll let y'all have some questions now.
Okay.
Somebody's got to start.
I guess that can be us. Well, I mean, for you, I wanted to know, has a mentor ever been helped influence how you've been growing? I mean, I know for Mr. Marling, it's been very influential.
Mm-hmm. Well, probably one of the smartest men I knew in business was a man by the name of Galen Brown with Bray. Actually, it was with Keystone Valve. He was a New York Stock Exchange company. He was just a smart businessman. He had about a $500 million revenue firm, consistently profitable, made about 15, 20% pre-tax profits, and he just taught me. He's passed away now, but he taught me a lot of the principles about business that I use today. And sometimes when I think about a problem, I say, what would Galen do? And actually, the Brown family has been very good to A&M, and his kids have at this point. So yes, I have a mentor. But a lot of it you learn on the fly. A lot of it you learn through experience. And it's nice to start off with a small business because you can make small mistakes. When you get to be a bigger business, any mistake you make is going to be a much bigger mistake. And so a lot of it's just the school of hard knocks, learning trial and error, to be honest. Yes.
Kind of branching off of your answer to that question, was it really difficult for you as an engineer, like an electrical engineering major? I know a lot of engineers right now are, interested in getting like a business minor or business certificate so they can do things like you did. Did you do that, or did you just kind of say, hey, let's go into business and I'll kind of just go with the flow and figure it out as I go, or was that your mentor, or how'd you transition?
It was mostly the latter. I mean,
Okay.
I got into business, started small, learned along the way, learned how to do banking, for example. In other words, I'd never dealt with a bank before and learned what all requirements they have, and learned tax laws and
You just read up on it?
employment laws, employment regulations, and yeah, I mean, you have trusted advisors, you have attorneys, and people you trust. But I'd like to tell you differently, but I had a lot of schooling. Robert might want to add something.
I'll just add to that, when we're small business, especially, like you said, it was you and your wife.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I first joined the bank, I looked around, and when I didn't have a CFO, I became one, right? When it was my marketing department. Oh, it was me. And then, I mean, you really did everything in the business. Legal department, you couldn't afford to hire lawyers too much, so you tried to become a lawyer, or you would, instead of having the lawyers write letters and you getting copied on it, you'd write the letter and copy the lawyer. I mean, you'd do anything you could to save money and to make it work. And so I think, when you're in that small scenario, that's when you're growing very, very fast. And, one or two or small environment is where the growth comes, and you start wearing those multiple hats. And today, creating value in people, we had a lady that worked for us at the house, and my wife and I were very busy. She took care of the house, right, and our kids, and driving places and all that stuff just to help out, grocery shopping, the basics, right. She's been with our family a long time, and now our kids are all out. And I told my wife several years ago, what's going to happen to this lady if we don't need her like we used to take care of the kids and do all that stuff, because we'll have a little more time. And so my wife sent her to school to learn how to do the computer, and sent her to school to learn how to do cooking. And she now cooks healthy meals, which is, I had a Burger King on the way down here, so when I get out of the house, I go nuts. But But I mean, what we did was, instead of having to worry about getting rid of her, we created some more value in her. And you do that in business every day. So if you're just wearing one hat, you're at risk. But if you have a skill set, some of you are better with customers than others. Some of you are better at technical work or programming. But the more hats you can wear, the more value you are to a company. Because I have people working for me that can do 4 jobs. And if that person was gone, I might have to hire 2 or 3 people to replace them. And so the smart guys will pay them too, not just abuse them, but they'll leave. You pay them for what they create value. So the more value you create, you work for somebody that recognizes it, and they can pay you for that. And I think that kind of helps in that environment. But wearing multiple hats is really the key to any small entrepreneurial shop. And then I'd be interested when you made the decision to go public. I mean, that's a big move.
We did it for 2 reasons. We did it to raise capital for our business and growth, and we've done that along the way. We issued some stock from time to time to raise some money. And you also do it to acquire other companies. You can use your stock as currency to do acquisitions with, if you choose to do so. And really, if you don't do one of those 2 things, if you don't raise money or if you don't use your stock for acquisitions and growth, you shouldn't be public because it's just way too big a hassle. And you should just remain a private company. Back to your decision-making point, I'm going to hand out this little 10 things I've learned in business kind of thing at the end of the class. And we're not going to go through it here, but I make a point about learn to trust your instincts, because when you're making decisions, your instincts will be right about 80 or 90% of the time. Just your gut instincts will. And don't be afraid to pull the trigger. But the other thing is when you make that bad decision, 10 or 20% of your decision is going to be mistakes. You got to cut your losses short. You got to get out and realize I made a mistake and get rid of that bad hire or get rid of that business you bought that you shouldn't have. Your instincts are honed with time, I guess, if you will.
If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to have those instincts to make decisions.
Quick decisions.
The longer you wait, the worse it is. I've worked with people that if they lost $50,000 because of a check forgery, now they have a check forgery committee meeting, And look, it's a cost of doing business. Did we learn something from it? And get out. Let's go get back to the customers, So you can wake up one day with all kinds of meetings that are a result of stuff that goes on that somebody's micromanaging. Don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Help them make decisions, particularly if you're an entrepreneur. Help your team make decisions. Because speed is the one thing we have at the advantage over the big companies, is being able to make decisions very quickly on behalf of our customers, our relationship.
Next question. Yes, sir.
When you started your business, you said you didn't have a business plan. Did you have disadvantages because of that? And if you did it again, would you come up with a business plan?
I probably did. I probably went down some blind alleys. In other words, I probably did some things that were stupid from a strategic standpoint. And yes, I think I was always opportunistic. I was never strategic. And if I could recommend one thing to you, it'd be to be strategic. Think about what path you want to head down and stay laser focused on that path. Me, I was just going in all kind of directions and bouncing off walls. And, sometimes it worked out, and a lot of times it worked out, but sometimes it didn't. So I could have saved myself a lot of agony if I would have had a business plan. So that's basically my answer. I think you ought to think about what direction you want to head before you head out on the journey.
Did you do that, Mr. Merling? You stayed pretty focused on what you wanted to do with the banking.
Yeah, I was pulling out the little the words I like to use kind of thing. And I find I use these words more than anything. If I get trapped not knowing what to say, which my wife will say that doesn't happen very often, I use words like compelling. So our guys will come in and, well, we ought to get into indirect lending, or we ought to go get a proposal for new coffee, and I'll say something like, is it compelling, at this time? Or we need to open a branch down the street. Tell me why it's compelling. So if it is, I'm jumping on board. So I use that word a lot. Focused is one that, laser beam, kind of thing. You just mentioned that. And staying focused on something. Us ADHD guys sometimes, or ADD, we get 80%, we bounce. So surround yourself with people that will complete the job. So staying focused on anything is key. And remember what I said, I started the bank, and my partner was a little worried that I'd get bored. And I was able to stay focused because I created an environment where opening branches or buying other banks, building this Walmart relationship, buying other companies, and today I've got so many things to touch, I'm not bored at all. It's fun. And so that's also the biggest key is, passion and fun. But anyway, my words are compelling, focused, simplicity. Sometimes people try to make things so complicated. I go into a room with guys and if they start talking tech, I just say, shut up, draw a picture. And then they know not to talk so funny to me because they can talk down to you. They come up with all these acronyms and all. And I mean, I used to know some of that because I used to be in it, but man, the tech world was pretty complicated. It's like looking under your hood in your car and say, explain that to me. So, but anyway, keep things as simple, particularly for your customers, to that, and your employees. So, and then significant is another one of my words. Those are my 4 words. So if you're going to do something, make it count. So we got in the foundation, and somebody's going to give them $100,000 or $500,000. I said, we're going to be in the business of giving money away. Let's do it right. And so I think making it significant. My wife, we got some other folks, but she's kind of heading that a little bit. And so she came in one day, and in my mind, I realized she's coming in to talk about, we're going to serve shrimp or fajitas or something at some dinner we're having. And I'm just going, it's not significant. I don't want to spend any time with it. So now when you throw some, I spend time with my wife. So, but I made it significant now. Now when she comes in, it's a bigger deal. You spend more time with it. It means something. And so if you're going to do something significant. And so I just keep simplicity, significance, focus, compelling as 4 words in my head at all times.
I'll give you an example. We're in the engineering business building oil and gas facilities, and somebody came along and had a real good opportunity for me to buy an air conditioning manufacturing business, a company called Thermal Corporation. It was such a great deal I bought it, but it was actually the biggest mistake of my life because it's a total right turn from the business I should have been in. And that's just an example of I was being opportunistic, and I was kind of being a bottom feeder looking for good deals, but it wasn't strategically right for our business. And we messed around with it for 2 or 3 years. We learned all the pitfalls of being a manufacturer in the United States and how difficult it is. And so we finally sold it. That was just unnecessary brain damage going through that whole process. It shouldn't have been if I would have had a plan. And the other thing I'd say is it doesn't take that much money. I mean, my wife and I started with $2,500 to start this business. And it's a service business, so it doesn't take too much money. And we really never put too much money in. And we really didn't borrow money from about the first 10 years of our existence. So you could, in a service business, if you're offering some kind of service, you can start pretty small and kind of roll it, build your business through internally generated cash flow. But the key is you got to live frugally. You got to always roll that money back. You got to put that profit back into the business at all times.
That's something we've heard a lot. Everyone says live frugally for a lot of the entrepreneurs we've had.
Overhead. I moved out of a big house to a little house. And I remember this story because I didn't have much money either. Getting in the banking business is very capital intensive. So my partner put up all the money basically. And I said, well, I want 20%. And he said, well, it's going to be X. And I said, okay. He said, well, you sign it. I'd sign a note with him. And then as time went on, he just said, you're good for it. But the point was, I lived frugally, and everybody was selling stock, and I bought all I could. And our bank account started depleting. I remember coming home one day and saying, I bought some more bank stock. My wife's like, you did what? And then I said, our IRAs that we had for retirement, just bought some bank stock in those. Aren't you excited? And then I went home one day and I said, I'm going to buy some more bank stock. We got a big block that's fixing to come available. I'm going to buy a big old chunk of that. She goes, you've just spent all of our IRA money, all of our cash, we don't have any money. How can you buy bank stock? I said, how is banking wonderful? You can borrow money. And so I went out and borrowed money and she started crying. And that's kind of the last time I told her about our finances, So I said, I'll tell you what, how much money do you need in your account now? And that's kind of the way we do it now. But it's cute because she's not the risk taker, And so, sometimes that's a good balance, to have that in our relationship. But I was the ultimate risk taker, particularly when you're young. Keep that overhead down. You can take a lot more risk. You start getting 3 kids, and house payment, you start limiting your options to some extent. But again, I didn't know I was even entrepreneurial until much later in life when people would say that to me. And I didn't even, I just worked hard and kind of came up with some ideas and then liked what I did. And then people referred to a banking organization that way. So I don't know about you, but I didn't think of myself as entrepreneurial at the time. So I guess now people say that a little bit more to me.
Yeah, in fact, I wrote an article the other day to our whole company saying, I don't know if that word existed when I went to school back here in
spell
1975.
it.
In other words, did the word even exist? Because I don't think it was commonly used back in 1975. And they certainly didn't have classes on it.
Yeah, I didn't have a spell check on my iPhone, so I couldn't spell it. Another thing that I like to say, and there's three other, I'm a simple guy, so execution, innovation, opportunity, those are three words that I keep. And so if you block and tackle right, whatever business it is you do, then you should innovate, whatever that is. Get close to the customer and innovate. And then all that creates that opportunity. So whatever it is, and then sometimes Steve Jobs, they can innovate first and then execute on the innovation, so you can flip those words. But a service business, our customers expect blocking and tackling. It's, if when I go to the laundry to get my shirts and the button's missing, I want to throw it back at them. I mean, I expect it to be perfect every time. Now, if they do it 2 days in a row, I might be changing, my cleaners or whatever, right? So banking is the same way. You mess with people's money, they don't like that very much. And we have to do that very well. And one of the things that we did in banking, Bill, was we processed 7 days a week. We're probably the only bank in the country that does that. So the data for the customers refresh Saturday morning, Sunday morning, holidays. So it's refreshed every day. And that makes it so easy for a customer to see what their real balance is, as well as our employees. Instead of going, well, you made that deposit Friday afternoon and Monday's a holiday and so it won't post till Tuesday, all this weird stuff going on. So that's a little bit of the simplicity concept. But the other one, as you mentioned about your 10 list, but we looked real hard because of our Walmart relationship. Sam Walton's creeds, we do a lot of those things internally. Just something, this is kind of simple and cool, right? But the bankers pay themselves every 1st and 15th. Or according to the news media, we pay ourselves every day, big bonuses. But they pay themselves on the 1st and 15th. And when we're getting busy with Walmart, Walmart pays their people every other Thursday. And so I'd have our employees when does Walmart get paid? Because we'd have a busy day. Have to order more cash and just have busy transactions. So it's real simple. We just changed our whole organization to pay when Walmart paid. Think how simple that is. And so now I know our people know when they get paid. And they then know when Walmart gets paid. And so for 5,000 employees, they don't have to guess anymore when Walmart is getting paid. And those kinds of little productivity, simple things that go on that make a difference in an organization. When you have 5,000 people or 2,000 people, you multiply efficiencies times an hour. We're normally open 364 days a year in the Walmarts. We close at Christmas, and this is the first year we closed at Easter. And the cool thing about that was we let each one of our branch managers decide, whether you're in Kentucky or in Florida or New York or in Brenham, Texas. You made the decision whether you thought it made sense to be open or not. And how cool it is when you can push those decisions down to the folks that make the
Did they all decide to be closed?
There are 180-something that stayed open. And what was cool was watching the decision process in Austin, Texas, which we have a bunch of Walmarts there with Woodforest inside them. And every one of them is going to be closed. And, management, of course, gets involved and goes, we're going to have to clean them up. We don't want all of them to be closed. But it was fun to watch them make that decision. We just sat back and let them. They said, you know what? One of our branches needs to be open in case some customer needs some help here. And so they made that decision on their own. So I, again, get back to one of the things that's been successful for us. There's 3 things I try to align. One's our employees are our customers. So hopefully our employees are using our products. So they get aligned that way. So customers are employees and then shareholders. So they turn the light off. So our employees are also shareholders of our company. That makes a big difference. So they'll stay a little after. They'll make sure the lights are turned off. They'll pick up the beer bottle that's thrown right there in the parking lot on the way in. Those kinds of things make a difference. And as a result of it, our employees are winning. If we do our job right, the customer and our employees are winning in their balances and their ESOP statements, 401k statements. And so it's nice to see. I'm sure when you went public, you made a lot of folks some money, and it's nice to see you share that wealth with your team of employees as well. So if you can align those 3 things, and it's always the investor first, shareholder first, but then customers, and employees. So the closer you get those aligned, the less friction you'll have in your organization.
Questions?
Let's turn it over to Cialis and we're trying to create a classroom discussion. So anyone from this group, you guys have any questions that you guys want to ask? Something you guys were thinking when they were talking?
I have a question.
Okay.
For you, Mr. Koski, you went to work for Exxon, and then you ended up starting in Global after that. I was wondering how much time was between when you had the idea of branching off and starting your own company and then actually doing it? And what motivated you? What sparked that idea? Because there wasn't entrepreneurial classes in school, and so what was there?
Well, I really went to work for Texaco, and I worked for them for about 5 years.
Okay, right.
And so I kind of got to dabble. After Texaco, I worked as a contract engineer. I was working in Exxon's offices as a one-person contract engineer. I was not their employee, I was a contractor. And so I kind of dabbled my toe into business for about 3 or 4 years and got used to sending out invoices and filling out tax returns as a corporation, things like that. But really, I guess in 1985, Exxon basically asked me to go out and start this business and open an office. And so it was really at their prompting that I did. It wasn't so much my idea. I wasn't proactively going into business. They asked me to go start an office and hire some people and get more formalized in business because they had a lot of work coming up. And they were going to rely on me to perform the work. And so it was actually at a client's urging. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just be quiet and let your customers talk to you, let your clients talk to you as to what they need. You know, ask them where are they hurting, you know, what do they need? And they'll tell you, and the easiest thing to do is sell them what they want to buy. If you can figure out what they want to buy, it's pretty easy to sell it to them. In this case, Exxon wanted to buy an office full of engineers doing this particular type of work on pipelines, what they call supervisory systems, automating the pipelines. It used to be you would have person at each pump station flipping the switch. You know, they'd call up and say, Joe, turn pump unit number 2 on, and Joe would punch the button out there someplace. But now they control the whole pipeline from Houston, Texas in a big control center. And that's the kind of work we were doing back in 1985, what they call supervisory control and data acquisition, automating the whole pipeline systems really across the world to be controlled by one center.
Okay.
And,
So it's pretty kind of like their idea. They just called you.
it was their idea. There was a lot of work coming up. They needed more resources, and they asked me to go get those resources and have them at their disposal.
Okay.
And looking back, what do you think set your company apart from all the other ones that they could have asked? Like, why do you think that they chose you?
Because I think we were smaller, we were nimbler, we were able to be more efficient. We could hire the best people, and like Robert said, when you get bigger, you get